Hi, this is Rich at Capital Bee Supply. What I wanted to do today is just make a quick little video on some package issues that you see every once in a while. One is an example of a shook queen package, and the other is an example of a dead queen package. So let me flip the camera around here and show you what I'm talking about as it relates to these things. Okay, the first example here that I want to go through, this is actually an example of a shook queen package. This package was actually shook a week ago today, almost down to the hour. I was in southern Georgia when these were shook and when they were packed up. So the queens went in, the syrup cans went in a week ago today. This is a package that we didn't send out. Well, actually it did go out in distribution earlier on in the week when we realized, or when it came to our knowledge through one of our employees, I think actually took this package home, that had shook queen in it. We just exchanged it out rather than having to install it and try to put a queen in there. So shook queen package, when this was first shook and when the bees were in here, everybody was clustered as normal around this queen cage, all right? But within about probably that would have been about day 4, the bees were starting to shift over to the left. And now if you notice right now where everybody's clustered, they're running around in here a little more than normal because of the fact I just brought them in from the other shop where it's dark and cold, and they're here in our classroom. So what has happened is the bees have migrated away from that queen cage, and actually, if I shine a light in here, the queen inside of that cage, and these actually have attendants in there, but the queen and also all the attendants are dead in that cage. And with the bees clustered over here, my suspicion is, a high suspicion, that this is a shook queen package. So when the packages are shook in the field, there are many different ways it can be done. Some producers, what they do is they have the crew go through and they scan for queens on frames, a queen on the frame. When they find her, they put her back in the colony, and then they shake the frames that are left out, shake the nurse bees and some of the older age bees off into a package funnel and ultimately into package cages. Now once in a while you get a situation where either there may have been 2 queens in the colony because maybe there was a situation where you had a swarm situation that was going to happen, or possibly they missed her completely and thought they put her back in the colony and didn't, and when they shook the package they actually shook a queen in. That is my suspicion on this package, is that it has a shook queen in it. So in these kinds of situations, if our employee would have shook this into his colony, and even if that queen would have went in alive, there's a good possibility the bees would have ultimately either ignored her or killed her in favor of the queen that is loose in the package. And if it was a situation he hung her in there alive even, and then they killed her or they let her die because they didn't attend to her, and he got a replacement queen and put in there, there is a high probability that the bees would kill any replacement queen that goes into this if there is a shook queen in this package cage. So this one we'll install and we will see what happens with it. What I'll probably do is I'm not going to put a new queen with it. I'm going to install it the way it is, and then I'm going to start checking to see if I see eggs within a few days. The weather here is miserable right now for that. But that's going to be my strategy with this to see. I could probably shake this down through a queen excluder in a shaker box and see if I could, happen to grab a queen out of this that might be running around loose. But I think my strategy is to install it and see what happens. So that's the first one. The second package, this is a dead queen package. Now, when you look at this package, it looks perfectly normal. The bees are clustered around. The queen cage is actually hanging over here on this side. So you can see there's a poly strap goes down, syrup can is here, queen's hanging over here. So as we get towards the later part of package distribution, what we'll do is we'll shake them down and double check to see what's going on inside the package, just to confirm before bees are going anywhere is if the queens are alive or what their condition is. You notice this one was also shook on the same day, same condition, same everything. Looks like a pretty good package overall. So if I shake this down, which I will do right now, notice in there what we've got is there is one bee alive in that package cage, but that is not a queen bee. It's an attendant in there, and I will verify that when I install this package, when I get a better look at her. The queen, I think, is laying down on top of the candy in there. But this is an issue when we tell people that if you have a dead queen hanging, that you install her as normal into the colony as if she was alive. Because notice what these bees are almost immediately doing. They are coming back up to cluster back up around that cage. It has enough pheromone there yet that they will cluster around it. That will keep them with the colony until we can get a replacement queen installed into that colony for those bees. So there's sometimes some differences between beekeepers in terms of how they want to do this, but that's an issue that you'll run into. So anyway, just a couple of packages to look at and see what's going on, and just some informational stuff to think about. So here you can see I pulled one of those queen cages out of a dead on arrival package. What you notice is there's two attendants walking around towards the top of the cage. In the bottom of the cage, sitting right on the very top of the candy plug, is the dead queen. Then down below that is two dead attendants. The other thing you notice about this too is that the bees have managed to eat away the wax paper that would normally cover the candy plug. They've ate away over the top of the screen. They've also ate away some of the candy plug in there as well. Once in a while, what will happen if a set of bulk bees is not accepting of a new queen, they will kill and can kill queens and also attendants through these screens. They'll bite off their feet as they're walking across the screen. They'll do other things like that to them to injure them or damage them in other ways as well. One of the challenges can be for new beekeepers especially is identifying queens. We always recommend that when you get a package that you look carefully at the queen cage and just make some notes, visual notes, observations about what a queen looks like. In a situation where you have attendants in a cage, for some people, especially if the queens are a little bit smaller, which they can be if they were pulled from mating nooks and have been in transit for a little bit of time, they can take and slim down. And they can be, in some cases, difficult to discern from worker bees, but you have to look closely at the details where their abdomens extend beyond their wings. You look also at the back of their thorax, how big the plate is on the back of their thorax, that kind of bare spot on the back. And also sometimes you can tell a little bit by the size of their eyes, but when they're moving around in a cage, most of the time you have to look for the physical size of the abdomen as your indicator. So what I've done here, I mentioned earlier in the video that I had two queens dead on arrival, is what I call them anyway, and one shook queen package. And I've taken now and I've installed those three. The other colony sitting on here is an overwintered colony, and they're interested in all the action around here. They're coming out. I'm under a canopy here today because it's been raining pretty consistently. I put up the canopy and I think they've decided that it's not raining so bad, they're coming out. So what I did here, this is the shook queen colony, and if I pick this up, some cold bees on here, but this is the one where the bees had started ignoring the queen in this cage, and they're clustered away from this on the opposite side of the feeder can. Queen and all the attendants are dead in this cage. But it didn't start out looking that way. It started out they were all clustered around this initially. It wasn't until about day 4 that they moved over. The other two colonies here, this one and the one on the other opposite corner, those were colonies where the queen was dead on arrival. Now, not all the bees in that cage are dead. Just the queen was dead and one or two attendants. There's a couple of tenants alive in each one of those cages. What I've done in both situations is I took and I installed those queens as normal. And the reason for that is the bees are still clustering around that queen cage. There's enough pheromone there, even though she's dead, there's just enough pheromone yet to hold them. And then what I'll do is we have some replacement queens, and I will take and bring those out and install them in these hives and replace those 2 dead queens that are hanging in there. But the issue is that it holds the bees in that hive. If you pulled that queen out and you walked away with it and you're going off to the supplier to get a new one, there's a good possibility those bees will abscond out of the colony. There's nothing there to hold them there. There might be some syrup or some honey or some pollen sub or something like that, which I've done on all these, but otherwise they're queenless. And you have to remember you're dealing with an artificial swarm when you're dealing with packages. So anything you can do. In fact, these all had 3-hole Benton wood cages. When you look at the plastic Jay's Bees cages, those have some queen pheromone actually impregnated into the plastic when they're manufactured. So leaving the cage in there, in our opinion, is the way to do it. If you have a queen dead on arrival, hang her as normal, just as if she was alive. And then when it comes to doing the replacement, you absolutely do have to get that dead queen out of there. There's no doubt about that, but that's the purpose. The other thing I did here is mixed up some pollen sub. This is just a powdered substitute with some sugar syrup put in it, and then I mash that down in between my frames when I'm doing this. Most of these feeder cans for bees that were out for 7 days in these packages, this one here is about a quarter full yet. This one over here is about maybe a little under a quarter full, and this one here is just about empty. There's a little bit of syrup in there, but not much. But all these packages, when they're in our facility, they're getting fed continuously just for that reason, because you can never trust syrup feeders whether they're feeding. So one of the issues is sometimes these holes don't get punched correctly. They're not either big enough, or in some cases they crystallize shut and the bees can't lick through. Most of the time they don't get punched fully so that they don't weep syrup, and that's a problem. The bees have to weep syrup. In fact, this one has 2 holes punched in it. There's now a 3rd one. If you look at some of these other ones, I guess all these this year, I guess all these are a 2-hole punch. Some outfits do 3-hole punch in them, but for whatever reason all these this year are 2-hole punch versus 3. So never trust syrup feeders in package cages ever. And the other thing is, once in a great while in the process of packing up packages, it's rare, but once in a while they take and they get them in upside down, so they're not actually feeding at all. The holes are up, not down. That's very rare for those things to happen, but occasionally it does happen. So the issue with these dead on arrival queens, why are they dead? That's kind of always the big question. Why did they die? It could be because when I'm down in Georgia and I'm watching this whole process of shaking and packing, I spot check that tray of queens, and you got a tray of, several hundred queens in there, all one shot. And you spot check through, you kind of scan through them, everybody looks good. So I'm relatively confident they went into the packages alive. Now, what happens when they go in? Is it something they got injured in the process of transfer into the package cage? Is it stress related? Is it that the bulk bees did not like that queen and they killed her? But then the question is, when you have live attendants, why did they kill everybody in the package cage? Because the attendants are the queen's daughters, and they came with her when she was pulled from the mating nook. The bulk bees are not her daughters. So there's a lot of questions related to that, transport stress, other things. But the bulk bees can look perfectly fine in the package, but the queen could be dead hanging in there. So that's just a little background stuff. We will check these out, especially that shook queen one. I'm going to come back in a few days. All these are in on drawn comb and stuff like that. And probably 3-4 days, I'm going to see if that one is queen right, actually. If my assumption is correct that it's a shook queen. If it's not, I'm going to have to make it queen right and fix it up that way with a spare queen. So anyway, a little background. We'll see what happens. We're back today, and what I got with me today, is a pair of live queens that are the replacements. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the 2 colonies that had dead queens on arrival. And as soon as I brought these queens out, of course, I've got a worker that showed up, and she's investigating what's going on with these queens. So I'm going to go through the process of putting these live queens in these dead on arrival queen colonies and see how it goes. So today we got a lot nicer day. Just a recap from yesterday. This colony here was a dead on arrival queen. This colony here was a shook queen. I just left the cage on top. This colony on the back side was a dead on arrival queen. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to install these new queens in and take care of this problem. See, the bees are actively flying today. Yesterday it was raining. It was miserable when we did the install. So we will see how this all shapes up as we go here. So my process is going to be is I'm just going to take out the queen in the dead cage and all. And there's different thoughts on how to approach this. One thought is to actually take that queen and take her out of the cage and throw her on top of the bars and let her sit and let the bees kind of realize, I guess, that she is dead. What I've generally done though with these is I'm going to leave these corked, so they have candy pulls in the end. I'm going to leave them corked, so I'm not going to do a quick release or anything like that on them, or even a slow release. I'm going to take and I'm going to wait a few days, let them get acclimated to these new queens, and then I will manually release them. And looking at this overwinter colony, these girls are bringing in pollen, and they're actually bringing in kind of a light colored white yellow pollen. Looks like they've got going on today, so nice to see they're doing good. Okay, so here we go. So this is what I got kind of set up. This is the colony that's a dead queen in there. Maybe I will just pry her out, put her on the top, just see what the bees do. Now if you can hear these bees, they are roaring. They haven't given them much of any smoke at all. They're just loud. You know what's going on over here? Everybody's interested. What's happening there? So there was our dead queen. I removed her out of the cage. That staple there, I'll get rid of that. But I'm going to just put her on the top of the bars here and see what the bees do. As you can tell here, he's pretty much ignoring her. I realize, hey, that girl there is dead. So I'm going to go ahead and install this other one in and just leave it corked. Actually, now they're kind of taking notice. A little bit. Taking notice. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And we've got some other bees here. I'm just going to set this one on top. See how these girls are doing. Over here. So they're kind of taking notice of her. See what's happening. So, there you can see somebody's already starting to carry out dead queen, one of the undertaker bees. She's carrying her out. And then they kind of tumble down in. New queen's in there. She's just kind of sitting and waiting. These girls are a little more quiet. Just kind of hanging out, so I'm going to pull this cage out. That's where my dead one is, but they're not quite as loud as the other hive. Let's see how this goes. So there's my dead queen for this one. I'll put her on top of the bars. Just kind of see what happens here. So there's some investigating going on. They're kind of checking her out. I don't think they really realize what is going on. So I'm just going to give that a minute until they realize that something's not quite right. Another. You can see they're kind of looking at her and stuff like that. Good shape. So I realize she's dead. I'm just going to give that a minute here and see what they do. In the meantime here, so So now they have started, notice how they've they're still kind of investigating her, but they haven't started carrying her out yet. Well, that looks like maybe somebody's going to grab her and take her away. And it looks like they're going to start to carry her away now. So there's our new queen there. I'm just going to come check and see what these girls are doing here. Oh, we're just fine. We're checking the waters out here and see what's going on. That's what they're doing. Just checking her out. No problem. So I'm going to install her in here and get her ready to go. So I got her in there now. I'm going to wait a few days and come back and I'll release her out and see what happens. That's all we can do. Hopefully everything goes good. Alright, so there we are. Replacement queens are in. Hopefully everything goes well. We'll see what transpires. Okay, so just a little quick update. I went into all three of those hives 5 days later here. The two of the dead arrival queens I had replaced, and then the one that had what I thought was shook queen in it. So it was so windy today that I wasn't able to get good video with good audio on it, but the shook queen hive, the one I figured had a shook queen in it, I started going through that today looking for evidence of a queen in there, and on the third frame that I pulled, actually there was a nice big fat golden colored queen running around on the frame. So that was a shook queen package. I know it is queen right for sure. The other two I had installed queens in, but I was doing manual release on those, and what I ended up doing there today, they had been corked for the last about 4 or 5 days, longer than what I wanted them to be because of just we had other packages coming in over the weekend. But in any event, I did release those today. They look to be in fine shape. The bees had not, tried to kill them or do anything bad with them, so that was encouraging that they accepted them. So that's a quick update on where we're at. I'll hope to get some video as we go through a little later on the season with another update on these packages and the corrections that we applied.